I think she was quite known for her feisty personality, calculated attempt by William and Kate to just make sure that their children are allowed to grow up outside of the spotlight.
The royal family always hide their tears well, but not this time. 7-year-old Princess Charlotte, always graceful and composed, shocked the world when her unshakable poise shattered on live TV. As cameras zoomed in, her eyes glistened, her lips quivered, and suddenly she broke down in tears. What could have pierced the heart of a princess so deeply? And what secret did her great-grandmother leave behind that brought tears to Charlotte's eyes? Join us as we discover why Princess Charlotte broke down on live TV. Elizabeth and Charlotte's secret musical, Bond. Behind the big doors of Buckingham Palace, in a room most people never see, sits a special old piano with more secrets than the crown jewels. It is a beautiful Steinway that Queen Elizabeth II used to teach young Princess Charlotte how to play. The palace staff knew to stay away from this room on Tuesday evenings. This was when the Queen would slip away from her royal duties to sit beside her great-granddaughter at the piano bench. The Queen had learned to play as a young girl, taught by her mother during World War II when the royal family needed comfort during difficult times. No cameras were allowed during these private lessons, and no formal portraits were painted. It was just a great-grandmother and her great-granddaughter connecting through music in a way that went beyond crowns and titles. The Queen noticed early that Charlotte had a natural talent for music. By age 5, Charlotte could already play simple melodies that had taken the Queen months to master at the same age. The Queen kept a special notebook where she wrote down Charlotte's progress after each lesson, noting how quickly the young princess picked up new skills. Their secret piano sessions became even more special when Charlotte turned 7. On her birthday morning, she found a carefully wrapped package waiting for her. The wrapping paper wasn't fancy or royal. It was covered in little horses, which matched Charlotte's love for riding. Inside the package was a silver musical box with tiny horseshoes decorating its lid. The Queen had worked with royal jewelers for months to create this one-of-a-kind gift. The silver came from a special collection that had been in the royal family for over 200 years. But what made this musical box truly magical was the song it played. When Charlotte opened it, she heard a gentle melody that the Queen had written herself. It was a lullaby the Queen often played during their piano lessons. Charlotte loved this gift so much that she wore it as a necklace under her clothes during special events. No one in the public knew about this hidden treasure or what it meant to her. The Queen had created this melody during a summer at Balmoral Castle. She worked on it early in the mornings before anyone else was awake, testing different notes until she found exactly the right sound. The palace staff sometimes heard the gentle music drifting through the halls, but knew better than to mention it. The musical box was made with a special mechanism that allowed it to play for exactly 2 minutes, the same length as the Queen's original composition. Inside the lid, hidden where only Charlotte could see it, the Queen had engraved a message: "Music lives in our hearts forever." On the day of the Wellington Arch Memorial Service, Charlotte wore 2 special gifts from her great-grandmother: the horseshoe brooch that everyone could see and the silver musical box on a chain hidden under her collar. What happened next surprised everyone. The grand organ at Wellington Arch began to play the first notes of that very same lullaby. The Queen had arranged this final gift before she died, knowing it would be her way of comforting Charlotte even after she was gone. The palace had kept this plan secret. Even the royal family didn't know it was coming. The Queen had recorded herself playing this special piece months earlier, knowing her time was limited. She made sure the recording would play through the hall's speakers at exactly the right moment. When the music started, Charlotte immediately recognized the melody. Her hand reached for the musical box hidden beneath her collar. For the first time, the perfect composure she had learned to maintain in public began to slip away. The musician who was supposed to play the piece later told palace officials that his sheet music had mysteriously disappeared just moments before he was due to perform. Yet somehow, the melody continued perfectly, note for note, as if guided by an unseen force. What made this moment even more special was that the Queen's lady-in-waiting later revealed that Elizabeth had spent her final months recording this piece, despite her failing health. Even when her hands became too weak to play properly, She insisted on continuing until she had created the perfect version. This musical connection between Elizabeth and Charlotte showed a softer, more personal side of royal life that few people ever get to see. Behind the formal ceremonies and public appearances, there was simply a great-grandmother teaching her great-granddaughter about music and life. But as those musical notes faded, who could have guessed that a young princess's tears would forever change Britain's royal family? Breaking years of tradition. One tear can change history. At the Wellington Arch Memorial Service, a royal photographer named Hugo Bernand saw a single tear fall from Princess Charlotte's cheek. He quickly took the photo, not knowing why the young princess was crying, or how important this moment would become. Hugo had been taking photos of the royal family for over 25 years. He had seen them at hundreds of events, always keeping their feelings hidden behind perfect smiles and waves. His trained eye, which had captured 3 royal weddings and countless ceremonies, noticed something unusual. Charlotte's fingers moved toward her collar, touching the outline of a hidden music box. What Hugo didn't know was that Charlotte was listening to her great-grandmother's special lullaby, the song they shared during their piano lessons. As the music filled the air, her hands trembled slightly. At first, Parker thought she might be cold in the spring breeze, but as the melody continued, Charlotte could no longer contain her emotions. The Wellington Arch had stood since 1826 as a symbol of British strength and tradition. On this day, however, something unexpected was about to happen. Nearby, Guard James Mitchell stood at attention. Every guard memorized a 104-page handbook of royal protocols, with an entire section dedicated to maintaining absolute separation from the royal family during ceremonies. The rule was clear: no interaction except in life-threatening emergencies. But as Charlotte's composure wavered, Mitchell made a decision that broke 312 years of strict royal tradition. He reached into the breast pocket of his red ceremonial uniform and pulled out his crisp white handkerchief. In that moment, he chose humanity over protocol. The handkerchief itself was purely decorative. Guards were trained to stand for hours without moving. Yet as Charlotte accepted the silent offering, centuries of rigid decorum cracked. This small act of kindness created a ripple effect. Hanako Tanaka, the Japanese ambassador's wife, had studied British royal protocols for months before her visit. She knew that approaching a royal without permission was inappropriate. Yet, watching Charlotte take the handkerchief, she stepped forward too. Her dark blue silk kimono, embroidered with silver cranes symbolizing happiness, seemed to bridge the moment between tradition and change. The shift continued. Diplomats from 17 countries, trained in rigid etiquette, found themselves caught between protocol and empathy. The French ambassador later wrote in his private journal that it was the first time he had seen genuine humanity overtake ceremony in 30 years of service. Young royals from Norway, Spain, and Belgium, who had stood perfectly straight, visibly relaxed in solidarity with Charlotte. Inside the palace, the event sparked debate. For centuries, the royal family had kept their private lives separate from public duties. Queen Victoria had cemented this tradition, instructing her children never to show sadness in public. The Royal Protocol Guide, updated every 10 years, reinforced this rule. Royals must always appear calm and composed, even during emotional events. Young royals like Charlotte began learning these rules at 3 years old. Special training sessions taught them how to maintain perfect posture and never, under any circumstances, let the world see them cry. Charlotte had always been one of the best at keeping her feelings private. What people didn't know was that before every public appearance, Charlotte had a special routine. She would spend exactly 7 minutes in her normality nook, a small hidden room at Kensington Palace, where she could be a regular child. The walls were painted her favorite color, yellow, and she kept ordinary toys there. A simple cloth doll, given to her by a little girl at a hospital, was among her most cherished belongings. This routine helped Charlotte balance her two worlds. But on this day, as her great-grandmother's lullaby played, it wasn't enough. Her private feelings became public, and millions of people watching saw her true emotions for the first time. Within hours, Charlotte's tear was on the front pages of newspapers in 47 countries. social media exploded with discussions about grief, childhood, and the pressures of royal life. The palace wasn't sure how to respond. This was uncharted territory. Music experts analyzed the lullaby, discovering echoes of old Scottish folk songs, connecting to the Queen's deep love for Scotland. Other young royals reached out. Princess Estelle of Sweden sent Charlotte a handwritten letter. Prince Christian of Denmark, who had lost his grandmother the year before, sent a small wooden music box as a gesture of support. Even Prince George, known for his serious nature, watched his sister with unusual focus. He had always understood that his future as king meant strict adherence to tradition. But as he saw Charlotte's moment of honesty, a realization dawned. Perhaps there was another way to be royal. Behind the scenes, Princess Kate had been quietly working to modernize how young royals were raised. Having studied child development, she believed children needed to express emotions in healthy ways. Charlotte's tears allowed her to push for change. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Some palace officials resisted, believing tradition must be preserved. But over time, subtle shifts occurred. Young royals were given more freedom to show their personalities in public. The rigid expectation of maintaining a stiff upper lip began to soften. Most significantly, the palace made a groundbreaking decision. Instead of suppressing the moment, they allowed the photos of Charlotte's tears to be published without criticism. This was a turning point, an acknowledgement that the monarchy was evolving. The events at Wellington Arch didn't just bend tradition, they created a new path forward. In the minutes following Charlotte's tear and guard Mitchell's broken protocol, centuries of royal rules were quietly but powerfully challenged. That single tear did what royal advisors and modern experts had been trying to do for years. It showed the world that the royal family were real people with real feelings. And in that moment of pure honesty, they became more connected to the people than ever before. While traditions crumbled beneath the Wellington Arch, could anyone have predicted how deeply this moment would transform Prince George himself? George and Charlotte's new bond. Something remarkable was happening behind the palace walls. Prince George, known for his serious nature,
Kensington Palace released a black and white portrait of Prince George to mark the occasion.
Began collecting newspaper clippings about his sister's emotional moment at Wellington Arch. The royal household staff noticed the growing collection in his private study area, carefully organized in a blue leather folder with the royal crest. Unlike what many people thought, George wasn't jealous of the attention Charlotte received. A royal aide who worked closely with the children observed that George would spend time each morning reading new stories about his sister. He would carefully cut out articles from newspapers delivered to the palace using special scissors his grandfather, King Charles, had given him for his birthday. The relationship between royal siblings had followed certain patterns for generations. History books recorded how royal brothers and sisters often competed for attention and favor. Queen Elizabeth II and her sister, Princess Margaret, had maintained a formal relationship in public during their childhood, saving their close bond for private moments. This tradition of public formality between royal siblings had continued for nearly a century. George's private tutor noticed a significant change in the young prince's interests during their daily lessons. George had always been fascinated by the rules and procedures of royal life. He kept a special notebook where he wrote down important protocols he would need to know as a future king. But after the Wellington Arch event, his questions shifted. During their history lessons about past monarchs, George began asking different questions. Instead of wanting to know about ceremonies and coronations, he asked about how kings and queens felt during difficult times. He wanted to know if other royal children had ever cried in public and what happened afterward. His tutor, who had taught 3 generations of royal children, had never seen this type of curiosity before. The royal siblings' daily routine changed in meaningful ways. The breakfast room at their residence had once been a place of formal manners practice. The table was set each morning with multiple forks, spoons, and knives, so the children could practice proper royal dining etiquette. The royal family followed dining traditions dating back to Victorian times, with specific rules about everything from how to hold a teacup to the correct way to place a napkin when leaving the table. After the Wellington Arch, this room transformed. The children still used proper manners, but something else happened in this space. George and Charlotte developed their special language of support. They created special words that only they understood, a private code that helped them talk about their feelings without anyone else knowing. During public appearances, George began to position himself differently. Royal appearance coordinators, who planned exactly where each family member should stand, noticed that George often moved slightly to stand between Charlotte and the crowds or visiting officials. He created a protective space for his sister, a small zone where she could take a breath if she felt overwhelmed. The siblings developed a system of secret hand signals to help each other during long formal events. A gentle tap on the wrist meant, "I see you're having a hard time." A soft touch on the elbow meant, "It's okay to feel tired or sad." These small gestures might seem simple, but they represented a revolutionary change in how royal siblings supported each other in public. Their art teacher shared a story with palace staff about a surprising request from George. The royal children usually worked on separate art projects.
Prince George has a hidden talent. It appears that the 9-year-old royal is a budding artist,
Creating individual paintings or drawings during their weekly art lessons. This tradition of separate work dates back many generations, encouraging each royal child to develop their unique style and talents. One afternoon after their art lesson, George asked if he and Charlotte could work together on a single canvas. This unusual request resulted in a painting that showed two young figures standing side by side, their crowns tilted at matching angles and their hands joined together. The painting was kept in the family's private quarters, away from public view. George began keeping small comfort items in his coat pocket during public events, items that connected him to normal childhood and family memories. He carried a spare handkerchief in case his sister needed it again. He kept a tiny photograph taken during a rare private family day at a beach in Norfolk, where the children had built sandcastles and collected shells away from cameras and crowds. Most meaningful was his courage stone, a smooth pebble from that same beach day. The children's nanny explained that George would hold this stone when he felt nervous during public appearances. Now, he would sometimes secretly pass it to Charlotte during long ceremonies, letting her borrow its comfort before she would pass it back to him. George even changed his bedtime routine. Royal children traditionally practiced their public appearances before bed, standing before mirrors to perfect their royal waves and formal expressions. Instead, George now spent this time writing small notes for Charlotte to find the next morning. The notes contained simple messages of encouragement and support that helped both children face their royal duties together. Through these small but significant changes, George and Charlotte were quietly creating a new model of royal siblinghood, one built on emotional support rather than formal distance. Their growing bond was reshaping what it meant to be young royals in the modern world. George and Charlotte shared a silent understanding only siblings could know. But could their special bond change the monarchy forever? The Children's Charter. Deep inside Buckingham Palace, something extraordinary was happening. A group of important people, royal advisors, child experts, and family members, gathered in secret meetings. They weren't planning state dinners or royal tours. Instead, they were creating something never seen before in royal history: the Children's Charter. It all began with Princess Kate's discovery.
The photo was taken by his mother, Princess Catherine, and shows the young royal dressed in a white shirt and dark blazer.
While looking through Queen Elizabeth's private study after her passing, Kate found hidden handwritten notes. These precious papers revealed the late Queen's dream for a gentler way to raise royal children. Queen Elizabeth had watched her great-grandchildren growing up and quietly hoped for changes that would make their lives happier. The Children's Charter brought amazing new ideas to royal life. Every day now has a sacred hour, 60 minutes when young princes and princesses could just be kids. During this special time, the grand state rooms transformed into playgrounds. Teddy bears had picnics on antique rugs worth millions, and children played hide-and-seek beneath portraits of their ancestors. Each palace also created an emotion embassy, a safe room where royal children could express their true feelings without worrying about cameras or proper behavior. These rooms had journals for writing private thoughts, art supplies for drawing feelings, and cozy corners with soft pillows and family photos where children could relax. The charter changed how royal children went to school, too.
Even a future king has school day nerves. Mom Kate, pregnant with baby number 3, was home with severe morning sickness.
Their schools started connection circles, where young royals could talk with friends who understood what it meant to live in the spotlight. At first, the older palace workers thought this was silly, but soon everyone saw how these friendships helped the children feel less alone. Royal nannies changed how they cared for the children. Instead of only teaching perfect manners, they learned about feelings and how children's minds grow. A new job called Royal Child Advocate was created to protect young royals' happiness during public events when cameras were flashing and crowds were watching. Other royal families around the world noticed these changes and wanted to try them too. Swedish princes and princesses learned special hand signals to use when they needed a quiet moment during busy events. Danish royal children had heritage hours, where they learned about their family history through fun stories and games instead of boring lessons. Princess Charlotte herself inspired one of the most touching new traditions, the Memory Box program. Each royal child received a special box to keep treasured items that reminded them of happy times and loved ones. These boxes traveled with them to public events, giving them comfort when they felt nervous or overwhelmed. Photographers noticed the difference at public events. The children stood more naturally and smiled more genuinely.
Prince William said the day went well, just a happy father and son.
They looked happier and more relaxed while still showing proper respect for royal traditions. The charter also created new rules for protecting royal children from excessive media attention. It acknowledged that growing up in an age of smartphones and social media presented challenges that past generations of royals had never faced. Unlike their ancestors, who were shielded from public scrutiny during childhood, modern royal children were constantly watched, their every move captured by cameras and dissected online. The new guidelines emphasized the importance of privacy, ensuring that these young royals could experience childhood without the relentless pressure of public expectations. As these changes took root within royal households, something remarkable happened. Regular people around the world felt a new sense of connection to the monarchy. Parents wrote letters to the palace, sharing personal stories about their children, about moments of joy, struggles with emotions, and the pressures of growing up in an increasingly demanding world. They no longer saw royal children as distant figures in a fairy tale existence, but as real, relatable individuals, navigating the challenges of childhood just like their own sons and daughters. For the first time, the royal family seemed more human, more approachable. The carefully crafted image of perfection that had surrounded them for centuries softened, replaced by something far more meaningful: authenticity. Young people who had once viewed the monarchy as outdated and disconnected from modern life saw themselves reflected in Charlotte, George, and other royal children. These young royals were not just heirs to a centuries-old institution. They were children growing up in the same world as everyone else, facing similar struggles, emotions, and experiences. Tradition and modernity, once seen as opposing forces, were now finding a way to coexist. And in that balance, the monarchy found a renewed purpose, one that embraced both its history and its humanity. Could a single tear at Wellington Arch spark the greatest change in royal tradition in over 300 years? What if Charlotte and George's unbreakable bond were the key to reshaping the future of the monarchy? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.